Good morning. Can you guys hear me? Good deal. So we're gonna sit on a water bottle here. We'll bring Pete back up, CEO of Metafora, Val from Uber, and
Valentina.
Valentina. Val is Val. We got two Vals. We got two Vals. So yeah, I think our goal, our plan here is just really. Did you lose me? There I am. Really just dive a little bit deeper into where do we start? What are some, I think, Pete, you talked a little bit about, what are some of the pitfalls, but what are some of the things we're seeing working? And then what are some of the things that you guys are really excited about as you look forward? And I actually want to start with Val, with you on the end, as you kind of ended your presentation there. What are some of the things that, you guys did at Uber as you look back? You talk about data management in that process as being, foundational and really important building blocks for you guys. Is there anything you would do different as you look back and as you've iterated on that process over time?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson learned for us was initial acceptance of the data as it was, and trying to build software to work around like pre-existing quality of data. That makes software really complex. You solve problems you do not need to solve. And as LLMs improve in their quality, ability to look at your data holistically and make incremental improvements and ensure the quality of inputs going into your models is elevated, that allows you to reduce complexity of what you need to build. So technology had to kind of catch up with that a little bit, but I think it's kind of traditional mentality of building software. I think both of you guys kind of touched upon, well, we have to meet the customers where they are, maybe in slightly different words, but you do have to deal with current challenges. And honestly, AI is almost like the godsend of being able to bridge this gap of this unstructured foundation you start with and where you're going.
Yeah, and yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Clarifying, so Val, in hindsight, you wish that you would put less energy into building around kind of poorly structured data set.
Absolutely.
And you kind of over-rotated on that because the tech is evolving fast enough to be able to handle that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and building on that, maybe kicking it back to you, or maybe kicking it back to Val, and then, Pete, I want to go to you. How did you guys approach that from a change management perspective as you initially started down that path? Did you feel like, hey, let's get the data right, and then let's get everybody, kind of working in the same direction and starting to see some of these things? Or did it start, talk a little bit, I see you smiling.
You mentioned this, building trust is very, very important. And that was somewhat of an interesting paradigm where we had to first build the trust within an actual engineering team who's just used to doing things a certain way. And then once we kind of figured out there, transpose that onto the entire organization. So it's like multiple sets of challenges. But ultimately, the approach is where you no longer take data as a given and you have to do something, and then you can rely on it and allow some autonomy, is something that required trust building, proof, showing actual measurements that the new approach does work and you can actually get there.
Yeah, and more internal, I think, on your guys' side, right? So, as you two approach that, with effectively customers in different ways, how have you guys had to, go about that and to establish that trust and to support prospective clients and customers to walk that path with you? We'll start. Valentina, is that okay?
Certainly. So it's complex, as Val was saying, because there's different layers to it, and it needs to be built up specifically for the different areas within the company. And I would actually divide data into hard operational data and then context data, which is something that's where AI comes in and where it's starting to give the next leap. So for us, it's really understanding the customer and how it works. It doesn't necessarily mean to adapt to what they have 100% and replicate the bad practices and data to escalate it, garbage in, garbage out. That's our daily phrase internally at Nauta always. So really understanding their context is the most important thing to actually be able to apply and guide them into the transformation. So a lot of times that's why we don't come in and teach operators how to do their job. We meet them in that sense, that halfway, and show them different ways that they can manage all this.
So really, really kind of supporting, which I think you kind of touched on in your presentation, versus saying, "Hey, you need to change the way you're doing something with this process."
And that cannot be done in logistics because logistics never stops. It's not like, let's pause this project for a second, let's implement this new thing, and then we'll hit the ground running once it's ready. You can't do that. Freight is moving, everything, it just doesn't stop. 24 Christmas Eve, everyone's still working logistics. So you can't expect things to be paused for new implementations.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about where to jump in because there's just like there are so many interesting things that we've covered. On the, you know, one of the themes of kind of every person that's gotten on stage this morning has been buy-in at the right level, and we talk about like executive buy-in, but kind of same thing amongst all the like ops managers, directors, kind of all the way down to the people. We're talking about trust and change management and adoption right now. I mean, one of the fundamental concepts of change management is the importance of marketing and advertising the successes. This is something that is, in my experience, done very poorly. Like if you want to find, it's the same thing when companies were adopting like BPO and nearshoring. Like you want to find the one sales rep that's leaning on an offshore team that has quadrupled their book of business and is making so much money for themselves and for the company. And you want that person on every monitor in the business. And I think the same concept around kind of advertising the wins and successes, where AI implementation is going well, is really important. I also think that there's an expectation management component to this. I saw this really interesting parallel where, like, if you hired a new employee and they made a mistake, you're not going to fire them. You're not going to, I mean, I guess it depends on how big the mistake is and how intentional or negligent it was, but directionally, you're probably not going to fire them. I think that people buy technology, and we're seeing this with agentic AI, and they implement it assuming it's going to be like a 9.5 or 10 out of 10 employee from day one, as opposed to conceptually thinking about that technology is actually like a 2 out of 10 employee day one that you have to train on your operations and your business. Now that's where like a technology partner should help do some of that. But it's the same thing with autonomous vehicles. I mean, research has shown time and time again, autonomous vehicles are way safer than human drivers, and yet, like, all it takes is one Waymo crash to pause a pilot in a city. And you think about how many idiots are out there driving distracted, not paying attention. I think that the same thing happens in business, where like the second that technology fails, like the expectation is so high because the second that technology fails, everyone points to it as it's no good. When in reality, like we are talking about replacing humans, and yet we're using a completely different set of expectations to measure them.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I love the idea of kind of what good looks like, kind of that concept and sharing the wins and making sure, the broader organization or even the market, pending your role, in this and some of the solutions, and sharing that, I think is really important. And curious, Val, from your perspective, as you guys have implemented and seen some of these wins, how have you guys, or have you been able to do that much to, you mentioned initially getting the engineers, up and running and kind of building that trust. How have you guys tried to approach that?
Yeah, actually, maybe slightly different data point. There was an interesting study, I think, put out by Stanford, where they compared engineering productivities with those using AI and not using AI. And those that have not been using AI were actually more productive. So a lot of people are like, what's going on here? How's that even possible? So as people dug in, it was really a matter of trust and training. So two things need to work in concert. One, you have to trust the tool, and the tools need to be trained in a context where they operate in. That's when they could be successful. Yet, similar to what you guys said, is actually very good point about showing the wins and advertising the wins and iteratively building your capabilities. That pretty much, I think that was the recipe for success for us. You start with smaller projects, you show promise, you add to your training because you grow the tools. And as you create a better and better foundation, you have larger wins, you advertise the wins and kind of build a flywheel of technology, training, and implementation. And adoption was not easy. It takes a while to show somebody the data, and you have to sit with the users, explain how this works. In many projects, we have actually maybe majority of the projects, we had to go and build human in the loop components where an operator would get a recommended solution from a tool, and then they would either approve or do something else with that or fine tune. And people would see that initial suggestions were in the very early stages were kind of bogus. And as the time went on and the tool got trained, suggestions quality improved, people start accepting them better, and measuring that is the gateway for people to truly see, oh, now this thing's like 95% right, and my employee who's been on the job for 3 months is right 60%. Well, maybe we should starting to trust this a little bit more.
And I would add to that a big learning. Yes, you implement bottom down, but you do need the buy-in and you do need the conviction from the operators at different levels, on the financial department, on the logistics department. They need to be on board with the project, because if not, the adoption is very hard, and then the expectations are not going to be met, the ROI is not going to be there. So I think there's also false expectations that it's a plug and play and you can just skip a lot of the people in the organization, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump on that, like super, super tactically. That means bring those people into the meetings early on.
I agree.
Like before you could have already made the decision that this is the vendor you're going with. Don't tell that to your team. I mean, I don't generally encourage misrepresenting things, but like, golly, bring them into the room, give them an opportunity to share their perspective, and then move forward with the decision. But at least you can point to, we heard what you said and we've incorporated your feedback in these ways, and these are the other parts that we're disagreeing with or that we're not moving forward with. But it takes like an extra couple of hours. I'm not saying that you need to have full representation in every single meeting, but be thoughtful about it, because it's an afterthought and then people are pissed off. Like, again, imagine if you made a hiring decision on if you hired a teammate for someone without giving them a chance to be involved in the interview or evaluation process or anything.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go with you. So I'm glad you jumped on that point. I think we kind of live in this society of we want it all, we want it now. And, we don't want to wait or slow down. And being, from my perspective, being a data vendor, software provider, I can certainly echo that as well, that, slowing down, ensuring that we're hitting the right goals, the right checkpoints, and the right people are involved is critical, right? Because the worst thing that can happen, I think, for any vendor, AI, software that's in this room, is that you get a customer and they leave you. That's the worst thing that can happen. And of course, it's even worse for an operator as well, because you've wasted a lot of time, a lot of resources. So I would certainly echo that and think it's super important.
I have a slightly different spin on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
The one thing that's worse.
This wasn't the script. Hang on. No. Okay.
The thing that's worse than you bringing on a customer and them leaving is you bringing on a customer and then the implementation never happening because they didn't get the right people on board, and you waste a ton of time and energy because we signed the contract and we have to deliver on it, when they spend the first year trying to get everyone on board that they said that didn't matter at the beginning. I mean, I've seen more time and energy wasted in that specific scenario than actually jamming through an implementation and then a churn.
Yep. Fair. I would agree. We've only got a minute left, so switching lanes a little bit, give everyone maybe 25, 30 seconds or so. What are you guys most excited about, that you're working on? I know we talked a lot about slow down to speed up, get everybody on board. But as we look a little bit further, what are you most excited about with the way you guys are working with AI, even if it's a little bit further out in the future? Maybe we'll go straight down the road. Can I call on you first? Yeah. Is that good?
I think that the fact that we've got a bit of a forcing function in terms of decreased margin and the hyper competitive market that we're operating in, that people have to change. And I think that that's just an exciting world to be in, where you are forced to have there be some momentum and decisions. I think that the worst thing that we see is just indecision and no progress. So I'm excited that there's enough momentum, energy, and forcing function.
Sure. Valentina?
The orchestration level of information in logistics, it's beautiful, complex, huge. It impacts everyone. I think in the fintech world, we've seen it happen. Everyone speaks the same language. You have a processor, a merchant, everyone speaks the same language. We haven't achieved that in logistics. And I think the time is now. And I'm excited to see it happen and be part of the transformation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more technical spin on this, being who I am. Technology that allows multiple agents to work in concert and communicate with each other, like we built, like to the original point of having to build something and then models got to deprecate it. Ability for disparate parts of the system to communicate seamlessly and solve problems together gives you much higher velocity. And I think that's amazing.
Fantastic. Well, Pete Rentschler, CEO of Metafora. I'm going to say it correct this time. Valentina Jordan, co-founder and CEO of Nauta, and Val Marchevsky, CTO of Uber. Thanks for joining us, and thanks everybody for listening.